Hello. My wife left me for what she thought was a better option, encouraged by her free-spirited sister. Now that guy has dumped her, and even her sister has kicked her out of the house. My name is Daniel. I am 36 years old, and I work as a logistics manager for a regional shipping company in Portland, Oregon. My job is basically solving problems before trucks start moving at 5 o'clock in the morning. So I wake up early, plan everything carefully, and I like when life runs on schedules instead of chaos. My wife, Melissa, is 34. We had been together for 7 years and married for 5. We owned a modest house together on the east side of the city and split the bills. No kids yet, just a golden retriever and a routine that looked pretty stable from the outside. Melissa worked as a freelance lifestyle photographer. Her schedule was the opposite of mine. Late nights editing, photos, random weekday shoots, brunch, meetings that somehow lasted until dinner. It worked for a long time because I'm structured and she called herself spontaneous. Her younger sister, Kara, was the wild card in the family. Kara believed she was what she liked to call free-spirited, which mostly meant she jumped between jobs, relationships, and apartments every 6 months while posting inspirational quotes online about living without limits. For years, Melissa treated Kara like some kind of personal life coach, even though Kara's life looked like a cautionary tale. Things didn't actually explode overnight. Looking back now, the shift started slowly about 8 months ago when Melissa began talking about how she felt stuck. Not unhappy, just stuck. She said my life was too predictable, that I planned everything, that I treated life like one long work schedule. I remember one Saturday morning when she said something that stuck with me. She told me some people are meant to build safe lives, and some people are meant to chase exciting ones. She said it casually while scrolling through her phone like she was commenting on the weather. I didn't think much of it at the time. What I didn't realize was that Kara had already been planting ideas in her head for weeks. Ideas about freedom, ideas about better options, and apparently ideas about one specific guy she had recently met through a photography event. That guy's name was Ryan, and according to Kara, Ryan was everything Melissa deserved instead of a boring husband who woke up at 4:30 in the morning to manage truck schedules. I didn't know any of that yet. All I knew was that my wife had started treating me like I was the safe backup plan instead of the person she built a life with. And the night she finally said it out loud was the night my entire marriage stopped making sense. The actual conversation happened on a Tuesday night in our kitchen, and I remember that because Tuesdays were usually the most boring part of my week. I had gotten home around 7 o'clock, fed the dog, reheated leftover pasta, and was halfway through answering a few late emails when Melissa walked in with that expression people where when they have already made a decision and just need to perform the announcement. She did not sit down right away. She leaned against the counter with her arms folded and watched me like I was a difficult client she had to manage carefully. I asked if everything was okay. She said she needed more than okay. That was how it started. Not with an argument, not with tears, not even with guilt, with this weirdly rehearsed speech about growth and alignment and how people outgrow versions of themselves. Every other sentence sounded like it had been fed to her by Kara, because Melissa had never talked like that before. She used to be direct. When she was angry, she said she was angry. When she wanted something, she asked for it. Now she sounded like a podcast, pretending to be a person. I let her talk. She said she felt trapped by responsibility. She said our marriage had become predictable. She said she had spent years being the good wife and she needed to finally choose herself. Then she dropped the real point. She had met someone who made her feel alive, not technically cheating, according to her, because nothing serious had happened. Yet, she made sure to frame it that way, like she deserved credit for only testing the exit before taking it. I asked who. She sighed like I was being tedious and said Ryan, the event photographer Kara introduced her to at some gallery opening downtown. Apparently, he was spontaneous, creative, well-traveled, and completely different from me. That part she made very clear. She said he understood her energy. I actually laughed at that, which irritated her fast. Then the mask slipped. She told me I had gotten too comfortable, that I mistook routine for love, that just because I paid the mortgage on time and kept the house running did not mean I was the kind of man a woman stays excited about forever. There it was, not confusion, not regret, just contempt dressed up as self-discovery. I asked if she was leaving. She said yes, but not in a cruel way, which is a funny thing to say, while ending a marriage over some guy who likes cameras and leather bracelets. Then she added the part one will probably remember for the rest of my life. She said Ryan was not just a distraction. He was the better option. And judging by the smug little nod she gave herself after saying it, I knew that phrase did not come from Ryan. It came from Kara. That was the moment I understood I was not in a marriage conversation anymore. I was sitting through my own replacement interview. The strange thing about moments like that is how calm they can feel. You expect shouting or some dramatic confrontation, but what actually happened was quiet. Melissa finished her speech, poured herself a glass of wine, like she had just completed a difficult task, and waited for my reaction. I asked one simple question. When are you leaving? She seemed almost relieved. I didn't argue. She said she had already packed some things earlier and would be staying with Kara for a while. That should have been my first clue about how much planning had already gone into this, because Kara lived across town in a small 2-bedroom apartment that she shared with whichever roommate she hadn't fought with that month. Melissa said it like it was temporary, like she was just taking a short break to explore this exciting new life. But the next sentence made the real situation clear. Ryan had a loft downtown. Apparently, he traveled a lot for photography projects and liked living in creative spaces. Exposed brick walls, studio lighting, all the things Melissa used to mock when we walked past those expensive converted warehouse apartments. Now suddenly that lifestyle represented freedom. She told me she wanted to move slowly and do things the right way, which I guess meant living with her sister first, so it didn't technically look like she left her husband for another guy. The mental gymnastics were impressive. I asked if Ryan knew she was married. She rolled her eyes and said of course he knew. According to her, he admired her honesty and respected that she wanted to handle things maturely. That word again, mature, as if blowing up a 7-year relationship because your sister convinced you a photographer with a motorcycle was a better option was the responsible adult choice. Melissa walked upstairs to grab the rest of her things while I sat at the kitchen table. About 15 minutes later, she came back down, carrying 2 suitcases and a tote bag full of camera equipment. Then she paused by the door and delivered one last piece of commentary. She said, "Someday I would understand that people deserve to pursue happiness instead of settling." That word stuck. Settling. Apparently, that was what her life together had become in her mind. A safe little box she had outgrown. She left without looking back. And just like that, my house was quiet. 7 years of shared routines gone in the time it took her to load 2 suitcases into Kara's car. I wish I could say that was the last time I saw Melissa acting confident about her decision. But the truth is the next few weeks were full of updates. Not from her, from Kara, because Kara absolutely loved telling me how great Melissa's new life was going. Kara and I had never been particularly close, but after Melissa left, she suddenly developed a strange habit of updating me about everything, not out of kindness, out of pure smugness. 3 days after Melissa moved out, Kara texted me a photo of the 2 of them standing at a scenic overlook outside the city. You could see the river winding through the valley behind them and a line of mountains in the distance. Melissa had one arm stretched out holding her phone, while Kara leaned into the frame like they were starring in their own adventure documentary. Melissa was wearing hiking boots, and one of those oversized sweaters she used to complain were uncomfortable. But in the photo, she looked energized, big smile, wind in her hair, like someone who had just discovered a brand new version of herself. The caption Kara sent under the picture said, "Living her best life." Now, I didn't respond. Over the next 2 weeks, there were more little updates. Apparently, Melissa and Ryan were spending a lot of time together. Kara made sure to mention how spontaneous he was. Early morning drives into the mountains, random weekend photo trips, exploring little towns 2 hours outside the city, everything she had been telling me our marriage was missing. The funny thing is, Kara seemed much more invested in proving this relationship was amazing than Melissa did. Melissa barely contacted me at all during that time. One short message asking about the dog, another asking if I could send her a couple files from the desktop computer she used for editing. No apologies, no explanations, just logistics. Then about 3 weeks after she left, Melissa finally came by the house. She said she needed the rest of her clothes. Ryan dropped her off in a black Jeep and waited in the driveway while she came inside. I only saw him for a few seconds through the front window. Tall guy, leather jacket, looked exactly like the kind of man Kara would describe as exciting. Melissa walked through the house like she was visiting a place she used to live years ago. Detached, she grabbed a few boxes from the bedroom and barely looked at me while we talked. But right before she left, she said something that told me exactly how she saw the situation. She said she hoped someday we could look back on this and appreciate that we both deserved partners who truly matched us. Then she smiled in that tight little way people do when they think they've already won. According to Melissa, she had taken a risk and chosen the better life. Ryan was the better option. Those were still the words she used. I didn't argue. I helped her carry the last box to the car. Ryan nodded at me from the driver's seat like we were 2 coworkers finishing a shift. Melissa got in the Jeep and they drove off together. At that point, I figured that was the end of my involvement in their story. Turns out it was actually just the beginning, because about 2 months later, Kara called me late at night, sounding very different from her usual confident self. The call came in around 10:40 on a Thursday night. I almost ignored it because Kara's name on my phone usually meant one of 2 things. Either she wanted to brag about Melissa's exciting new life again, or she wanted to start some pointless argument about how I had held Melissa back for years. Neither of those conversations interested me anymore, but something about the time made me curious, so I picked up the first thing I noticed was the tone in her voice. Kara always sounded loud and confident, like someone performing for an audience. Even when she was just talking on the phone, that night, she sounded different, tired, and a little nervous. She started the conversation in a weirdly cautious way. She asked if I was home. Then she asked if I was alone. That immediately set off alarm bells in my head. Finally, I asked what she actually wanted. There was a long pause before she answered. Then she said, Melissa needed a place to stay, just for a little while. I almost laughed because for the past 2 months, Kara had been practically hosting a victory parade about Melissa escaping her boring marriage. Every update had been about freedom and excitement and how amazing Ryan supposedly was. So hearing her suddenly ask me for help was interesting. I asked the obvious question, what happened to Ryan? Another pause, longer this time. Then Kara said they were having some issues. That was the phrase she used, issues. Apparently, Melissa and Ryan had been arguing a lot recently. According to Kara, Ryan had a different idea of what a relationship looked like. He liked being spontaneous and independent. Melissa, on the other hand, had started treating the whole thing like a serious partnership, which, from what Kara said next, Ryan did not appreciate. He traveled a lot for work, sometimes for weeks at a time. And while he was gone, Melissa had basically been living at his loft like she owned the place. Kara said Ryan didn't exactly sign up for that level of commitment. Then she dropped the part that made everything click. Earlier that day, Ryan told Melissa he thought they had moved too fast and he needed space, not a break. Space, the exact same word Melissa used when she ended our marriage. Apparently, he had also asked her to take her things and give him some time to figure out what he wanted, which meant Melissa was suddenly standing in Kara's apartment with 3 suitcases and nowhere else to go. Kara tried to make it sound temporary, just a few days, maybe a week, until Melissa could sort things out. But the truth was pretty obvious. The better option had just decided he wasn't interested in the responsibility that came with her. And suddenly the exciting new life didn't look nearly as stable as the boring one she had walked away from. I stayed quiet for a few seconds after Kara finished explaining, not because I was shocked. Honestly, the situation felt almost predictable. When someone burns down their entire life chasing excitement, it usually works great right up until reality shows up. I asked Kara a simple question. Why are you calling me? She sounded irritated immediately, like the answer should have been obvious. Because Melissa is still your wife. That was technically true. We had not finalized the divorce yet. Paperwork takes time, and neither of us had rushed to file it. Because up until that phone call, Melissa had been pretty confident she was starting a completely different life. But Kara saying it like that told me something important. They were not calling because they respected me. They were calling because the backup plan suddenly looked useful again. I asked where Melissa was. Kara said she was sitting in her apartment living room and had been crying most of the evening. Apparently, Ryan had not just asked for space. He had also mentioned that he was traveling for a photography job for a while and did not want complications waiting for him when he got back. Translation, he was done. Kara tried to spin it like he just needed time to think, but the tone in her voice made it clear she did not even believe that herself. Then she finally said the thing she had clearly been working up to. Melissa wanted to know if she could come back to the house, just temporarily, until things settled down. I did not even hesitate. I told her no, not maybe, not let me think about it. Just no. Kara went silent for a second, like she had not expected that answer. Then she immediately switched into negotiation mode. She said Melissa did not have anywhere else to go right now. She said it would only be for a short time. She said we were still married, so it was not unreasonable. I let her finish. Then I explained something very simple. 2 months earlier, Melissa had stood in that same house and told me Ryan was the better option. She had packed her things, walked out the door, and driven away with him like she had already upgraded her life. You do not get to uninstall that decision just because the update failed. Kara did not like that answer. She said I was being cold. She said people make mistakes. I told her that might be true, but some mistakes come with permanent consequences. And Melissa choosing her better option was one of them. That was the moment Kara finally stopped pretending this was a polite conversation, because the next thing she said told me Melissa had not actually accepted reality yet. Kara did not bother hiding her irritation after I said no. For the first time since the call started, the friendly tone disappeared completely. She said I was being petty. She said I was punishing Melissa for making a mistake. And then she said something that honestly explained a lot about how Melissa ended up in this situation in the first place. She said if I really loved Melissa, I would help her when she needed it, not when things were easy, when things were hard. I asked Kara a question. Did Melissa say that herself? Another pause. That told me everything, because the person asking to come back was not even the one on the phone. Kara was negotiating for her. Then Kara said Melissa wanted to talk to me directly. I told her no, not angrily, just very clearly. I said there was nothing Melissa could say that would change the situation. The conversation we needed to have already happened the day she walked out of the house and told me she had found a better option. Kara tried to push again. She said Melissa just wanted to explain things. She said Melissa felt terrible. She said she deserved the chance to talk. I told Kara something simple. Explanations are useful before someone leaves, not after. That was the point where Kara stopped trying to sound reasonable. She said I was acting bitter. She said people make mistakes all the time and marriages survive worse than this. I reminded her of something Melissa said the night she left. She told me she had outgrown the life we built. She told me Ryan was the better option. She said she deserved something more exciting. I explained that decisions like that are not temporary experiments. You do not get to press undo just because the exciting option stopped working. Kara got quiet for a moment. Then she said Melissa had nowhere else to go. Apparently Ryan had already changed the code on his loft door and left town for a photography job. The same afternoon, he asked her to move out. So Melissa had packed her bags and gone back to Kara's apartment. 3 suitcases, no plan, no place to live. And suddenly the boring life she walked away from looked a lot more valuable. Kara asked me one more time if I was absolutely sure. I told her I was. Then I wished her luck figuring things out and ended the call. For the first time since Melissa left the house 2 months earlier, the entire situation finally felt settled, or at least I thought it was settled, because the next morning I walked outside to leave for work and found something sitting on my front porch that I definitely was not expecting. The next morning started like any other weekday. My alarm went off at 4:30. I got up, made coffee, fed the dog, and went through the usual routine before leaving for work. For the first time in weeks the house actually felt calm again. No arguments, no tension. Just quiet. Around 5:20, I grabbed my keys and opened the front door. That was when I saw the suitcases, 3 of them, sitting neatly on my front porch. For a moment, I just stood there trying to process what I was looking at. They were the same suitcases Melissa had packed the night she left. One large black one, a smaller gray roller bag, and the tan travel case she always used for camera gear. And sitting on top of them was Melissa. She was wrapped in a hoodie, arms folded tight like she had been sitting there for a while in the cold morning air. When she saw the door open, she stood up quickly. I did not say anything. Neither did she at first. Then she started talking fast, like someone who had rehearsed the speech all night. She said Kara had kicked her out. Apparently, Kara's landlord had found out Melissa had been staying there for weeks and threatened to raise the rent if another tenant kept living there without being on the lease. Kara, who loved freedom and spontaneity in theory, apparently loved her cheap rent even more. So Melissa had packed her things and left. She said she did not know where else to go. Then she said she was sorry. Again, same apology as the night before, just longer this time. She said she made a terrible mistake. She said she had been influenced by the wrong people. She said Ryan was not the person she thought he was. She said she finally understood what she threw away. I listened quietly while she talked, not because I needed to hear it, but because once someone starts confessing like that, it is easier to just let them finish. When she finally stopped talking, she looked at me like she was waiting for the door to open wider, like the ending of the story was obvious. I stepped outside and pulled the door closed behind me. Then I picked up the largest suitcase and set it next to the other 2. Melissa looked confused. I told her something calmly. This house stopped being her home the day she chose her better option. Her face changed when I said that. Not angry, more like the moment someone realizes a door they assumed would always stay open has actually been locked the entire time. She asked where she was supposed to go. I told her that was the same question she should have asked herself 2 months earlier. Then I walked past her, got in my car, and left for work. And for the first time since she walked out of my life, I felt absolutely certain I had made the right decision. I expected that to be the end of it. After I drove away that morning, I figured Melissa would eventually call one of her friends, maybe another relative, and figure out some temporary place to stay. Portland is not exactly a tiny town. People manage to find couches and spare rooms all the time, but apparently Melissa had spent so much time burning bridges the last 2 months that her options were thinner than she expected. Around noon, my phone started vibrating. Unknown number. I ignored it. A few minutes later, another call, then another. By the 4th call, I finally answered, mostly because the constant buzzing was getting annoying. It was Melissa. Apparently, she had borrowed someone's phone. She sounded calmer than she had that morning, but there was a tension in her voice that had not been there before. She asked if we could talk. I told her we had already talked. She said she understood why I was angry. I told her again that I was not angry. That part seemed to confuse her. People expect anger after something like this. Anger at least means there are still emotions involved, which she was hearing instead, with something much quieter. Finality. Melissa tried another angle. She said 7 years together should mean something. She said people make mistakes. She said marriages survive affairs, financial disasters, even worse things than what she did. I let her finish. Then I reminded her of something. She said the night she left. She did not say she was confused. She did not say she needed time to think. She said she had found a better option. Those were her exact words. Better option. I explained that when someone describes another person like a product upgrade, they are not asking for forgiveness. They are announcing a replacement, and replacements do not usually get returned to the original store after 2 months of use. There was a long silence on the phone after that. Finally, she asked one last question. She asked if this was really it. 7 years just over. I told her something honestly. 7 years did not end when I closed the door that morning. 7 years ended the moment she walked out of the house believing she had already found something better. Then I hung up. Later that afternoon, while I was finishing paperwork at work, my phone buzzed again, but this time it was not Melissa. It was Kara, and the message she sent made it very clear that Melissa still had not fully accepted the situation. Kara's message came in around 3:15 that afternoon. It was longer than anything she had sent before. The first line already told me the tone had changed completely. She said I was being cruel. According to Kara, Melissa had spent the entire morning sitting in her car trying to figure out what to do next. Apparently, after I left, she loaded the suitcases back into the Jeep Ryan had dropped her off in weeks earlier and drove around the city for hours. No apartment, no plan, just driving. Kara said Melissa had finally broken down crying in a grocery store parking lot and called her again asking what to do. Reading that message, I realized something important. Melissa had not expected consequences. She had expected a dramatic reconciliation story, the kind where the husband is heartbroken, but eventually takes his wife back once she realizes her mistake. Except real life does not always follow those scripts. Kara kept typing. She said I was acting like a robot. She said I should show some compassion. Then she added something that made me laugh out loud in my office. She said if I kept acting this way, Melissa might actually lose everything. I stared at that sentence for a moment. Then I typed back the only response that made sense. Melissa did not lose everything today. She lost it 2 months ago, the moment she walked out of her house and chose what she called the better option. Kara never responded after that. About a week later, I heard through a mutual friend that Melissa had moved into a small studio apartment on the other side of the city. Nothing fancy, just a temporary place while she figured things out. Ryan never contacted her again. Apparently, he posted photos from 3 different countries over the next month, like nothing had ever happened. As for me, I finished filing the divorce paperwork not long after. The strange thing is I do not feel angry when I think about it now. Just clear. Melissa wanted excitement. She wanted something better than the stable life we built together. And she found out the hard way that sometimes the thing people call boring is actually the thing holding everything together. The lesson I took from the whole situation is simple. When someone tells you they have found a better option, believe them, then let them go see exactly how good that option really is. Bye-bye.